again. I'm so happy to see you and happy for this beautiful morning that I'm having today. So last week I shared a little bit about my hiatus in my doula posts, and I wanted to come back and share some more about that. So I think, like everyone in life, sometimes we have some ups and downs, and we have things that happen and that can be challenging for our own lives. And that's always a really interesting thing in doula life, because the people that we're working with are really relying on us to be their rock in a lot of ways. So what do you do as a doula if you're not feeling very solid to be someone else's rock? And what my experience over the years, and I've been doing this, 17 years, and I've had many times in my life where I've had to take a step back from birth doula work. And what I want to say to you all is, just because you take a step back doesn't mean you have to take a permanent step down and out. And I see that happen way too frequently, that doulas go through a bit of a tough time in their lives, or midwives or nurses, and they just completely leave the field and think, this isn't for me, I'm not cut out for this, and they leave. And that to me is so sad, because I did have that feeling very early in my career, around the 3-year mark. And I remember taking a little bit of a break because I was only doing this part-time. And when I came back to it, I was so rejuvenated, and I was such a better doula. And of course, I went on to end up doing another decade and a half of this work so far. So I want to chat a little bit about that, and that concept of, how can we take a step down or step back without completely leaving this work? And early in my career, I started noticing that a lot of doulas, midwives, nurses, just helpers in general, people in the helping field, that around that 3-year mark, they started feeling a little bit off or discouraged or overwhelmed by some of the things that we see in this work. And I started calling it the 3-year itch. You guys probably heard of the 7-year itch. It was originally like a Marilyn Monroe movie, about 7-year itch in marriage, where, you start to feel a little bit uncomfortable or kind of wanting out of your marriage. Anyway, that's where that term originally came from. But when I started doing research on this, I realized that there legit is a 3 or 4 or 7-year itch that people feel in different, both in their marriage and relationships, but also in other parts of their life. And I decided to do a real deep dive into the evidence that was out there on this topic. And I came upon a whole bunch of evidence on vicarious trauma. And I had been doing this work for 3 years at the time, and no one had ever, 3 or 4, maybe by the time, it was probably more than that by the time I noticed this, and no one had ever talked to me about the concept of vicarious trauma. And because my previous work background was in business, it wasn't something that I had been exposed to through that part of my life, although some of you might have heard about this a lot. And so what I realized is, we're really doing an injustice by not supporting each other through something that's actually very, very common in the helping field. And that is feeling very overwhelmed and jaded by what we're seeing, and the lack of support that we receive personally, that our clients might receive. And so this concept of vicarious trauma, or secondhand shock, it was originally sort of coined, from my research anyhow, it was originally coined by people who were sex assault therapists, so people who had to listen to traumatic material regularly but respond in a constrained manner. And when our friends come to us and they share something really difficult, we often respond in a normal response, like, oh my God, that's horrible, I'm so sorry, oh, what an ass, But when we're in a therapist or a worker role, we tend to have to respond in a constrained manner. And it turns out that in some research that is actually a vigorous neurological activity. There's a plane up ahead. And that, and this is really an extreme statement, but this, I'm just conveying what the research found, is that that vigorous neurological activity can actually cause us some brain damage. So that's a really kind of scary thought, because as doulas and childbirth educators, we sometimes see stuff that is really difficult to be part of, to bear witness to. And so there's a few different things going on here. So So one is I want to talk about what do you do when your own personal life is challenged. But the second thing, and I think this is a really important component and why I'm looping this in, is this concept of vicarious trauma. Because sometimes what we don't realize is the fact that we're feeling so crappy is directly related to the work that we're doing and how we're processing it, more importantly. So in the description of today's session, I'm going to post an article that I wrote on vicarious trauma. It was originally posted in the International Doula, published by Doula International, and just summarizes some of the research and how I think we should cope with vicarious trauma. But I want to come back for now to how to cope with having your own difficult situation in your life. And there's a few things I think that are important to address. And the first is we have an obligation to our clients. And if we cannot provide an adequate service to our clients, then we need to get help from our doula colleagues to make sure that our clients are taken care of. Because it is totally unacceptable for us to be dropping the ball, not replying to clients, not fulfilling our obligations because we're going through a difficult time. So the first is you got to pull up your panties and you've got to get your clients the help that they need if you feel that you cannot do that. The second option is for us to rally and wrap up any contracts that we have ongoing, but then take a break. And this is probably usually what I do. And what I have found for myself is, and this could be experience or age, I don't know, but I find that I can compartmentalize fairly well. And so when I was going through some difficult personal times recently, even though I was a bit of a disaster on my own, that when I had to go to a birth or a postpartum shift, that I could rally and compartmentalize my own issues and leave those at the door as I walked into the home or to the birth environment. So, you know, that if that's possible for you, then that's great, because obviously our clients would be disappointed if we had to cancel on them or hand them off to another doula more appropriately. So that's something to consider. And the other thing is, when we're building a practice, if we can build a practice where we can do a lot of different things, and so that if we need to take a step back from birth doula work, for example, that maybe we can continue to make income or money doing something else. That is the best way to build a business, because of course it's a concern for us when all of our income is directly tied to our ability to be present and providing a service with someone. So directly tied to the hours that we're able to physically spend. That's difficult, because if something happens to us, then we're not able to do that. So that's another thing for us to be considering, is how have we diversified our practice so that we can take breaks when we need to, we can take vacation, we can take time off. And hopefully that involves, you know, some savings and some buffer and some other revenue generators. So that's something for us to think about, and I'd love your ideas and your feedback on how you've done that as a doula in the comment section below. And then the other thing that's an option is to take a break and take some other temp position. Do something else for a while. Clear your head. Do what you need to do in your own life, in your own personal time. Do the healing that you need, whether that involves therapy or medication or time off and breaks and sunlight and you know, walking in nature and meditation and yoga and healthy eating and spending time with people who love us and who can guide us in healthy ways. There are a million things that we need to be doing for ourselves, and it's not a cliche, folks. Like, if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of anyone, your family, your clients, everyone. So making sure that we're doing that. And in the article that I've linked below, I talk all about those different things. So I want you to consider those different options. And listen, taking a temp position, I've taken a couple of temp positions over the 17 years, or had other jobs in the 17 years I've done this work. There are times where I've taken a break for 5 months, 6 months, 3 months, whatever it is, and I come back and I am so much more rejuvenated, and I'm so much more focused on this work, and I really feel like I've been so much more effective because of the hills and valleys of this work and the time I've taken off over the course of these years. So I hope that that encourages you to, if you're not feeling awesome, or if you need to take some time off, or maybe you have been taking time off as a doula and you're wondering about coming back to it, I would really encourage that you do. You'll come back in such a different place and in such a rejuvenated way. So I hope that you can learn through my own difficult year so far, and I'm so excited to be back in the saddle and working. I have a good caseload this fall of clients that I'm so excited to be working with, and really looking forward to sharing more with you and with my clients. So love you. Bye.